Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me for this final webinar on collaborative approaches to vocab-rich schools. Just before we start, there have been a few tech issues, and if there should be a problem, if it does crash out, then don't panic. The session is all being recorded, so it will simply be sent to you at a later date in the next few days. So if it does disappear, don't panic. It'll all get to you at some point, but hopefully it won't. We're all praying it doesn't. Secondly, it's National Thank a Teacher Day. So from my family to all of you watching, a huge thank you for all that you do. You're an amazing crew. What a profession we have. So thank you so much for the time and effort and energy and blood, sweat and tears that we all shower on this lovely job called teaching. All right, let's have a look at what we're going to be doing today. So we're just going to have a brief look at some of the questions that came in from last week. The question box wasn't showing up for us, so we couldn't do them last week. So we'll just have a quick look at those. Then we're going to look at a whole range of activities that really extend that expressive and receptive vocabulary for our children, that ability to understand and their ability to then produce that high level, good quality vocabulary that we're all really striving for. And then we're looking at some collaborative approaches and how we are very definitely stronger together. Okay, so let's start off with some of those questions. Okay, so 3 things I really picked up on from some of those questions that came through last week. A couple of people were looking at, because we were talking about noun choice last week and being specific in our noun choices, and a couple of people were saying, well, how does that work with the whole show don't tell idea behind writing? And actually I think to a great extent it really benefits that ability to show not tell, because the more specific we are in our noun choice, the better picture we're giving. So certainly once we get to GCSE, we're always talking about being really specific, not generic. Don't just say the effect on the reader is. Don't just talk about how, you know, this is a general effect. This makes the reader feel curious. This makes the reader feel, you know, be really specific. And it's about that noun choice to identify that specificity. That's not easy to say. In our talk and in our writing. So I think that specific noun choice actually really helps. There were lots of questions coming through about transition, and this may well be something that we're looking at increasingly in the next few weeks. So watch these spaces, because transition is certainly on the minds of many of us. But I think what I wanted to say about that, there will be lots of things that we look at in the next hour that really are great transition activities, and I hope that they might help you. But really, I think all of us need to be really careful and mindful of well-being. I think that's our key at the moment. Families and our young people are going through quite a range of different experiences right now, and for me, in my opinion, I think it's 100% to do with well-being and what that looks like, and making sure that any transition activities have that at the forefront. And I know that there's an increasing amount of traffic on Twitter talking about this, and that really is our #1 priority right now, isn't it? But there'll be lots of activities we're looking at in a minute that you might think, actually, that would be a really lovely activity that we could look at for transition. A couple of interesting questions about measuring impact and how we track the progress of oracy. How on earth do we track vocabulary and its progression? Well, a couple of things I wanted to say about that. Something we mentioned last week as well when I was talking about inspection. But don't forget that all of those soft measures are really key in terms of pupil voice and teacher voice. In terms of, you know, have you got a debating club? Is it well attended? Has it built in popularity? What do library book what do you call that, subscriptions, the amount of library books coming out of the library, what does that look like? But equally, obviously, we've got some more hard data tracking that we can be doing. And here there are a couple of links to the Communication Trust and to One Education, both of whom provide progression tables for vocabulary. They have in all 12 different categories that track listening skills, questioning skills, discussion, vocabulary, across 6 different stages. And it essentially gives you that progression of what it looks like to improve in each of those 12 sections. And those make some interesting reading. So have a look at those. There are the links on the slide, and I think they're coming up on the chat box. But that might give you some food for thought, and certainly in terms of CPD, that might enable some cross-curricular conversation with your teams. So hopefully that's useful. Okay, so moving on to today. I didn't bring any popcorn. Should have brought some popcorn for us all. We're going to have a little watch of something that you're all probably very familiar with, although none of us have been to the cinema very recently, sadly. But I want to frame this session really through the eyes of this little trailer that the View Cinema have. Because This Is Not a Cinema really works well for us when we're thinking about the depth of creativity that we can reach and stretch and strive for. So this is not a cinema. I want us to think as we watch this in terms of this is not a school. So Sam, thank you. Can we have a little watch of this? And while you're watching, just have a look and notice all the nouns that are being used. Just look at the words that are being used to describe this is not a cinema. Thank you, Sam. Thanks, Sam. So This Is Not a Cinema. Do you know what? If I was head teacher right now, I would remake that for This Is Not a School, because I just love that. It makes me feel a bit tingly with the passion and the potential that is there. And that's what we are in school, isn't it? That is what we capture. So the thought that you could do that for your class, say this is not a lesson, this is not a school. What is this? This is the potential to change the world, frankly, isn't it? And that's why we all have the best job in the world. But there's lots you could do with that. And so I think, this is not an ice cream, but that would make quite a nice little project. You could do some PowerPoint slides for that quite nicely, couldn't you? This is not a song. This is not a pen. All sorts of ideas there. But let's hold that in our heads as we go through some of these activities, that actually we have such a powerful role in school to enable and boost life chance, and that really, really starts with talk. Okay. The National Literacy Trust very helpfully have mapped reading skills across the Voice 21 oracy framework. So we've looked at the oracy framework a couple of times, but we've got this integral link, haven't we, between all that we do in the English classroom. In fact, to separate them often is quite difficult and quite unhelpful, because it's such an integrally linked aspect that we're looking at, isn't it? Linking reading with oracy. And these sessions are really about talk and about having great communication skills, because we really feel that that is at the heart of our learning. But of course, that is an integral part of reading, because that's chicken and egg, isn't it? We've got the words in front of us, it becomes our talk. So the National Literacy Trust have helpfully framed some of these ideas and reading responses across that Voice 21 framework, looking at, you know, where the quality texts come in. It's quite helpful to look at the linguistic elements, the cognitive elements, the metacognition there, making the reading process visible through our talk and our fluency. So that's quite helpful. Infogram, do they call it an infogram, I think, where you've got, you know, coming to life what it is that we're doing in talk and how that can thread into reading. So I wanted to show you that first, just to help frame what we're looking at in terms of books and literature and poetry that's coming up next. The author and educator James Britton said that reading and writing float on a sea of talk. There's quite a few nautical analogies, aren't there, with this subject area, but they float on a sea of talk. And I think that's really important and lovely to try and retain as we look at some of these ideas. Okay, so let's have a look at some activities then, which I hope you will find useful and be able to take back with you. Don't forget, of course, you're the expert in your setting, you're the expert in the room. So some of these you might think that won't work for us, but I hope that by the end of the session you've got a few ideas in front of you. Okay, you may well know this book. I've got it here, Lost Words. It's huge, it's beautifully, oh, I can't get in the picture. It's a really lovely, large book. Remember the big books that we all used to have in primary? It's a little bit like that, but it is a quite beautiful collection of poetry about the natural world around us, and it comes from a fear that Robert Macfarlane and Jackie Morris had, that we are losing our ability to name parts of nature. So I'm just going to read that beginning to you. So this is how the book starts. Once upon a time, words began to vanish from the language of children. They disappeared so quietly that at first almost no one noticed, fading away like water on stone. The words were those that children used to name the natural world around them. Acorn, adder, bluebell, bramble, conker, gone. Fern, heather, kingfisher, otter, raven, willow, wren, all of them gone. The words were becoming lost, no longer vivid in children's voices, no longer alive in their stories. And so Robert Macfarlane and Jackie Morris teamed up to create this book, this spell book they call it, which is quite clever because as you go through, there are lots of letters just floating around. And actually, if you put them all together in the right order, they will spell the names of some of these creatures. But they put this together to try and reawaken that love of the natural world, but that focus on our naming of those parts of the natural world. He said in an interview, Robert Macfarlane said, "We find it hard to love what we cannot give a name to, and what we do not love, we will not save." So there's a whole cross-curricular benefit to this book, isn't there? But some of those ideas and poems that are written like this, let me show you. They're written as acrostics. So Magpie, that's a fabulous one. It's one of the shorter ones, which is why I picked it up, because it's easier to have a quick look at. But they're written as acrostics. So every poem in there names an animal and is written in that way. So it's a lovely way to really boost those noun choices, those really specific nouns. Don't tell me it was a bird. Tell me it was a wren. Don't tell me it was a snake. Tell me it was an adder, because then we're much more specific, and the picture in our listeners' or our readers' mind is much stronger. And apart from anything else, it's really important that our kids can name a couple of different trees in their garden. Okay. There's a Kickstarter campaign as well, actually, to this book, to try and get one in every school. So hopefully you may have one in each of your schools. Okay, moving on. I can hear a bit of feedback, actually, Sam. I don't know if you can. Calligrams. Calligrams are a beautiful way of capturing a picture poem. We've got a couple of examples there. It can be really, really simple, from just using one word, you know, duck, and trying to make the picture of that duck with the word, or it can be an outline of the creature or the noun, whatever it might be, with the keywords within it. So you've got the idea there of quacking, soft swimming, flying, nesting, quiet hawk. And actually, there's a real benefit to this in terms of retaining vocabulary, because as soon as we put images to our vocabulary and to our words, then we retain it, we remember it much, much better. So these calligrams, I think, are a nice way of retaining and keeping information, but also of making something really beautiful. These would make lovely displays and our poems in their own right. Now, there's a little short clip that we're going to play you now that is silent, so don't be worried that you can't hear anything. You're not meant to, but it's just lots and lots of different calligrams coming out. It's only about 20 seconds. So let's just have a little watch and see some of these calligrams on this clip. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Sam. So there was a few there, just to give you a bit more of an idea, but there's a huge cross-curricular benefit to these ideas. I just thought, you know, geography, maybe using maps, places, rocks, roads, MFL display, maybe something clever with the periodic table in science. Be a really nice activity, possibly as a transition activity, to just create this with your name, and instead of, you know, the slightly boring do an autobiography task, maybe this could be personified as a calligram. So you've got your name in the middle, and then you design a picture of whatever it might be that you love. It might be rugby, it might be piano, it might be cinema, film, who knows, but you create yourself as an image with all of the words that make you attached around. Okay. Another lovely idea that we shared this week on Chatterstars, if you follow us, we're doing a daily vocabulary activity there, is the blackout poem that probably lots of us know, but we might have forgotten. I actually had forgotten this idea. I used it a lot when I first started teaching, but I'd forgotten it. And it's so lovely because it's actually a really kind and calm activity to really focus on vocabulary, because it's all there. So the stress of finding the right word is gone because it's all there in front of us. We find an old book, maybe just check that we're allowed to rip pages out of a book. It feels wrong, doesn't it? But, you know, we do have a lot of obsolete books in schools, and certainly the old library books that are maybe a bit damaged. We could save some of those pages, newspaper pages, and just take out a section and use it to create a blackout poem. So you find a key word in the text in front of you that is going to set your theme. In here, perhaps it was the word tide that they found, or floated. And then you try and find maybe 8 to 15 other words that really bring out that theme, that sound lovely, that you think you can create some kind of poetry from. And then you black out the rest and make some kind of picture behind it that really echoes the narrative that you've tried to pull out. But those blackout poems are a lovely idea and very stress-free. Actually, it's a really lovely activity. There's a little link there. You're wondering, I can tell, I can sort of hear you all saying, why have you got a link to the Scouts? Well, actually, they've got a really lovely step-by-step guide in child speak as to how to create a blackout poem. So I just thought I'd include that there, because if you wanted to set this as an activity, that's a really useful link. Let's not recreate the wheel. they've got a really nice link there to creating a blackout poem. And what a lovely set of displays that would make. It's a kind of a found poem, isn't it? And that just reminded me of there's a guy, I don't know his name, you'll probably tell me in the chat box, who goes around listening in towns and in streets to snatches of conversation. And from those snatches of conversation, you'll never guess what John did, you know, that kind of stuff as you're walking by people. He creates poetry from that. I think that's such a fab idea. And it's a little bit like that, isn't it? Those found words in the blackout poem. Okay, we're all probably quite familiar with kennings. This idea of exploring nouns and having ways of describing a thing without using its actual name. Beowulf does this a lot, and there's a slide of that in a minute. But this is a really lovely idea, and actually can link up, as it does here, with those calligrams. So without using its name, you know, a great way of teaching noun phrases. We've got meat eater, keen fighter, great pouncer, big yawner, loud roarer. All sorts of really creative, imaginative ways of describing the lion or whatever it might be, but without using his actual name. And again, that really helps us with that specificity, there's that word again, of identifying a noun and really bringing to life through our noun choices. So I would have a look at kennings as a really useful way of doing that. And here's some from Beowulf. It was a real key aspect of Norse mythology, was naming things without using their name. And there's Beowulf doing exactly that. Hellbride, terrormonger, hellbrute, corpse maker, sky plague, poison breather. You know, there's real power and passion behind some of those kennings that would be brilliant to bring to life in the classroom through talk and then through capturing it perhaps in one of those calligrams. Okay, I did think this would make quite a nice quiz. We've talked previously about trying to keep our low stakes assessments frequent. And what a nice quiz this would make, you know, just choosing, I'm sitting in the kitchen, so I'm just choosing maybe the table or the tap, and you might describe it as the plate holder or the water giver, and just doing a little quiz, seeing if people can guess what the noun was. That might be quite fun. Okay. Another really useful activity that properly integrates all the skills of an English classroom, listening, reading, speaking, writing, is the use of a dictogloss. This happens quite a lot for EAL teaching. So anyone who's learning English as a second language or in MFL, I'm sure your MFL colleagues will know all about the Dictogloss. It's a really great activity, a really clever way of bringing together content and vocabulary, and very clever at pinpointing those skills of listening, reading, speaking, and writing as one thing. So we're going to have a look at how we do this. The idea is that you have to produce a text as close as possible to the original text that the teacher reads out. Here we go. So there's a couple of things we need to do before we do the actual Dictogloss lesson itself. Firstly, we need to teach the subject content. So there might well be a range of vocab that we need to teach. We need to find a short text, about 150 words, that is a good model for what it is we want our students or our pupils to be doing. Could be a model exam answer for GCSE, could be just a model report, could be a model piece of creative writing, but it needs to be about 150 words, ideally with some challenging subject vocab in there, and a formal academic register, ideally, because that really gets those brains whirring and ticking. Okay, and then here are the steps. There's about 6 steps. So starting off, the teacher reads the text. That's all, just read it aloud, and the students are just listening to get the gist, to try and work out what's happening, who, what, where, when. Then the teacher reads it a second time, and our pupils can take notes. They can jot down ideas. Okay, then you put pupils together and they compare what they've written. They try and find out who's got what. Oh, I didn't get that bit, I got that bit, and sharing all their ideas to try to begin to reconstruct that original text. Then the teacher reads it a third time, and that's the final time. And then pupils can come together again and work in pairs to try and write out that piece of text that's been read to them. You can then join pairs together so that you're in 4s and create a final version. So there's a real collaborative, shared element to this task. And it's really focusing on the vocabulary, and it's really focusing on the structure of writing those words down and the content. And then finally, it can be read aloud to the class and work out, was it pretty close to the original, marking it for fluency, for accuracy. It might be that those less confident students actually find this quite supportive, because it's not done in isolation, it's all paired and then in groups. And sharing those ideas really helps. You know, if you're feeling less confident, then that's really helpful, isn't it? Okay, so yeah, step 6, reading it aloud, that final version to the text. So a really great activity, can work through from you know, year 3, 4, who are just doing a very short piece, right through up to A level. Actually, this is a really useful vehicle to bring together all those activities. It really focuses on the vocab too, because there are keywords that will be jumping out that they know they have to include. Okay. Bit of Lego. Gotta love a bit of Lego. This is a great way of isolating what it is we need to hear when we are trying to create something. So in the Dictogloss, you're trying to mirror a text. In this activity, you're trying to recreate a structure. So with lovely bits of Lego, you create this structure when you're sitting back to back. So students sitting back to back, one has the Lego, one has a picture of what it is that the other guy is trying to create. There's a little link here that I've included, because it shows this activity happening, shows two lads having a go at this activity. One is the talker, one is not allowed to speak. He's just got to put the pieces of Lego together. And you can play around with this. So you can say there's no talking at all from one partner, or you can say they are allowed to ask questions. And that really then isolates what is it that we're asking, and does that help our ability to then create, if we can really clarify what's being said. It's a really nice activity for grammar because it helps us pinpoint prepositional phrases: in, under, together. But it's a nice way of getting a bit of fun into the classroom and thinking about what does it look like to try and create these ideas in terms of talk. Another way you can do it, if you don't have any Lego, is a bit more simply to do it with just a quick draw. So you could draw just a random squiggle that A has got to then describe to B, who's not allowed to look at it, or it could be a picture of a cat, but they're not allowed to use the word cat. I think that little girl in that picture is cheating, because you're not meant to look round, actually. So no looking, no cheating. It's just back to back. One knows what it is, the other one has got to create it, but only through listening skills and talk. Okay. Let's move on. Okay, so let's start to think, there's a whole load of activities. Let's start to think about our collaborative approach and some more collaborative activities. We're very much stronger together. And that's just a quick brainstorm from me there about all the sorts of people and places we can be collaborating with when it comes to really improving our talk, our vocabulary, plugging some of those cultural capital gaps that then allow us to have that talk at an even higher and deeper level and understanding. We're very good at collaborating generally within school. You know, we're using older students to support younger students, A-level students to help our year 7, our year 6s to help our reception. We're not bad at that bit. But when it comes to actually breaking down the walls of our school, I think that there's a whole range of ideas that we can be really inventive with linking up with business, technology, art galleries, debate teams, getting them to come in, sports commentaries, you know, depending on the setting and context of your school and the likes and the passions of your pupils, that will be the guide as to the intent with which you collaborate. So many opportunities here. That last one about VR, that's quite frightening, isn't it? You know, that's the classroom of the future, where we can suddenly actually become immersed in other worlds, in other areas. There's such potential with that whole idea. But yeah, so to collaborate with the community really does make us stronger together. Those joined up approaches, local and national projects that are going on, if we are involved with those, the opportunities to plug cultural capital gaps and to really improve understanding and talk are huge. Okay. We talked about Pixar previously, but Pixar are really impressive with the way that they talk about storytelling. And there are those 22, I think, rules of storytelling that are great to have a look at. But they say a movie contains literally tens of thousands of ideas. They're in the form of every sentence, every performance of each line, in the design of characters, sets and backgrounds, in the locations of the camera, in the colours, the lighting, the pacing. I just think actually that's a really great analogy, isn't it, for what we are and what we have. If you replace the word movie for a successful CV or a successful secondary ready pupil, whatever that looks like, then that's what we are. We are we are all of those parts and all of those ideas that Pixar talk about. If you replace sets and lighting with classroom climate, it's about having all of those elements within us and making the environment right for all of those things to happen. And Pixar have all sorts of ideas to do with storytelling that are really helpful for us and really engaging, because the way they use character is just fab, isn't it? You know, look at all those films they've done there. I think Up might be one of my favorites. So collaborating, Pixar is a good place to have a look at. Another really fab idea is Pinterest. And I know that we're all very familiar with Pinterest, but let's not forget it as a place to go to search for ideas. It's this visual discovery tool, isn't it? And actually, we're all visual learners, pretty much. We find it quicker, maybe, and easier to look at an image to really clarify what it is that something is trying to suggest. So in terms of collaborating, Pinterest is a really great place to go and fill up boards and create all sorts of ideas with, they call them pins, with these different pictures and images. The reason you can see my daughter and I there is because that's my Pinterest page. To see all those dots around it, apparently you can just scan that and then you'll be able to find my page. But there's a link to my page as well, because I've put together a whole load of vocabulary and word gap activities and displays that I think you might find useful, that really have all sorts of depth and interest to them. So if you go and search for me, then you will be able to find all those pins that I've put together that really capture great ideas for word gap activities and for display. But there's oodles on there, so go and have a look and be inspired by some of the very creative things that are going on in classrooms. And you know what, for time-strapped teachers like us, it's a really great tool because it's so quick. Although you do get stuck down little rabbit warrens and you forget what it was you were even looking at because you get so sidetracked by so much of the great stuff. Okay, the British Library as a place to collaborate with are quite amazing. I hadn't fully appreciated just how much there is on their website. They have an enormous learning area and children's books area that is well worth a look. I wrote a scheme of work about 18 months ago on London. Certainly for us at GCSE, it seems to be that a knowledge of Victorian London and London in all its guises is really very helpful. So I wrote a scheme of work on London. And the British Library were invaluable in their opportunities and their newspapers, music recordings, maps, manuscripts, all sorts of treasures that they have there that really bring to life our history and our cultural heritage. So have a look at what they've got to offer. There's 2 links there for you, but just I pulled out that some of the ideas they've got there for 7 to 18-year-olds, that's their focus. They've got things on creating a story soundtrack, how to create a talking animal, 10 unique ideas from Joseph Coelho about writing your own poetry, how to do a comic strip, creating an imaginary school, how to create your own cookbook. There's all sorts of interactive and fascinating ideas there. And they also do free workshops. So if any of you are near enough or do a trip to London, then inquire about that, because those free workshops are really interesting, where you can actually see some of those historic documents and manuscripts and get a feel for what they have to offer. So British Library, go collaborate with them. They've got such a wealth of information that is just fascinating. How are we doing for time? Not bad, 20 minutes. Okay, let's motor on. English Speaking Union, we will probably know most as the debating competition people, but they do so much more. So they are well worth a look. And at the moment, right now, they've got a really interesting thing called the Festival of Speaking. So that is a non-competitive, there's no competitive element to it. It's just a really fun way of practicing your speaking skills. So go and have a look at that, because all our pupils can be entering that Festival of Speaking, where they can create a little speech and upload it of them in their t-shirt at home, you know, so there's no school uniforms involved. It's just a festival to celebrate talk and to celebrate speaking. Thank you to Jackie, who reminded me of this, because I'd forgotten that that was there. So have a look at that. I think it's a really interesting idea. Who inspires you and why is their theme, as a catalyst from VE Day. But that's all free and non-competitive, so that might be a nice activity to have a look at and to collaborate with them. Okay, TikTok. Do you know what? Our kids are absolutely loving TikTok, aren't they? 500 million active users. It's more popular than Snapchat, and anyone from about the age of, well, probably far too young, are aware and using TikTok. Now, there are all sorts of warning signs with social media, of course, but if we think of TikTok, you know, and all those brilliant teacher dances that are coming along at the minute and challenges, in its purest sense, it is essentially a finite YouTube, because it's time limited. I think 15 to 60 seconds long. There's all sorts of filters and stuff on there, and slow-mo and graphics that you can layer on, and it's a really creative platform. So given that that's where our children are, and I really believe in starting where our children are, TikTok might well be something we could look at to emulate. I'm not suggesting that we use that actual platform, but we might want to emulate that as an activity. So creating a TikTok something, suddenly there's a model there that our young people are very familiar with and are loving. And so we shouldn't ignore that, because that's definitely where our young people are. That's what they're enjoying. All sorts of possibilities with that. There used to be, when Facebook was more of a thing for kids, there used to be something called Fake Book. That was not Facebook, but it was like a fake book for teachers, because Facebook had lots of useful stuff. You know, if you wanted to create Lady Macbeth's Facebook page, that was quite helpful. So there was a fake book. So maybe we need something like that for TikTok. Tic-tac, I don't know. TikTok teach. Something that is useful to think about. But in terms of collaboration, that might well be something you want to look at. Okay, so from super relevant and modern now to something that is a bit more old school and Enid Blyton. The Summer Camps Trust have on their website 50 different activities for these lockdown days, lots of which are creative and making. Here's one that I just pulled out, which is to create a code breaker. So you literally create 2 wheels with 2 alphabets, and that enables you to create codes and try and crack the code. But their website has got lots of other ideas on it that might be useful to trigger talk and to trigger vocabulary, such as that code breaker there. So I would suggest having a look at that and seeing what might work for you and might be useful there. Okay. So let's revisit that slide. We've got there lots of different ideas and lots of different people that we can collaborate with that allow us to really pull out the best of talk, the best of reading, and the fusion of putting them together. Obviously, talk lies at the heart, and our ability to narrate orally and our ability to improve and deepen our understanding of vocabulary comes through a rich theme of reading. It really is an integral task, isn't it, that we have to pull apart and put back together in terms of vocabulary, really making sure that we've got those deep quality texts that enable us to improve our talk and improve our writing. That lovely phrase that reading and writing float on a sea of talk, really, I think, personify these webinars, because it's that sea of talk that we really have to upskill, deepen, and add passion to, that will move us on to where we want to be in terms of talk. So oracy and talk first. Because then, look, that's what happens to our kids. That's what happens to our young people sitting in front of us. They have invisible cloaks. Once they have that depth of understanding, they have invisible shields and swords and hats and wings. And I'm sure that you've been enjoying, like we have, The Boy, the Mole, The Fox and the Horse. I might not have got that in the right order. But there are some stunningly beautiful images there. And in fact, my youngest son's school are using that book to pull out some ideas for them each week in terms of helping their well-being. And I think probably for us as a profession, we sometimes feel that in our little classroom, when it's just us, we don't really make the biggest difference. It's more about the whole place. But actually, even though the mole is saying, I'm so small, the boy tells him, you make a huge difference. And our capacity to make a huge difference with just that planning and passion to create a real audience and a real life experience for our students is immense and makes such a difference. So let's remember those images, that little wizard there with his cloak on. It's invisible, we can't see it, but if we have equipped them and if we furnish them with a vocabulary that all of those kinds of activities will do and will promote, then they can go out and conquer any world that they choose to encounter. Let's finish up with this lovely man. The last word. He says, you must strive to find your own voice, because the longer you wait to begin, the less likely you are to find it at all. And I think it's absolutely crucial. And actually, this film, Dead Poets Society, is probably why I became a teacher, and is really powerful. And we're just going to watch a really short clip about perspective and the need to change our perspective to really get the most out of the world we live in. So thank you, Sam. Let's just have a quick look at the very lovely Mr. Keating, aka Robin Williams.
Why do I stand up here? Anybody?
To feel taller.
No. Thank you for playing, Mr. Dalton. I stand upon my desk to remind myself that we must constantly look at things in a different way. See, the world looks very different from up here. You don't believe me? Come see for yourselves. Come on. Come on. Just when you think you know something, you have to look at it in another way. Even though it may seem silly or wrong, you must try. Now, when you read, don't just consider what the author thinks. Consider what you think. Boys, you must strive to find your own voice. Because the longer you wait to begin, the less likely you are to find it at all. Thoreau said most men lead lives of quiet desperation. Don't be resigned to that. Break out. Now, don't just walk off the edge like lemmings. Look around you. There you go, Mr. Christie. Thank you. Yes. Dare to strike out and find new ground. Now, in addition to your essays, I would like you to compose a poem of your own, an original work. That's right. You have to deliver it aloud in front of the class on Monday. Bonne chance, gentlemen.
Thanks, Sam. So yeah, dare to strive and find your own voice. Thank you, Robin Williams. I think that's one of my favourite films of all time. So thank you. It's really about having courage. And remember, we were looking at Latin and Greek stems, and the heart of the word courage comes from the Latin for heart. So let's have heart in our classrooms and passion with the choices that we make in terms of our activities. So thank you for joining me. This has been webinar 5 of 5. Can you believe it? Stay in touch. There's my Twitter and Chatterstars links. So we're posting a daily vocabulary activity on those pages. So do follow me, because then you will get those daily vocab activities as well, some of which you will recognize if you've been with me on these webinars. But a huge thank you for all of your messages and things that have been coming through, and actually on these chat boxes it's been fascinating seeing your questions and seeing your ideas, and it really does tell us that we're stronger together. The more we collaborate, the more that we are sharing ideas, the better, because sometimes you've got oodles of ideas and sometimes you've got none. And we all change all of the time. Some days we are winning at life and some days we need 17 cups of coffee. So the more we collaborate, the more we share ideas, the better. So thank you hugely for joining me. If there are any questions, we've got a few moments now just to have a look at them. And yeah, I'm going to miss these Wednesdays too. It's been really real highlight for me to share some ideas with you and have your feedback. It's been just brilliant. So if there are any questions, I'll do my best to give you sensible answers. But otherwise, go forth and be vocab passion advocates. Don't know, we might not be getting the questions through the chat box, who knows. If not, well, that's my dog. Can you hear her? That's Delilah. Okay, what are the best catch-up vocab and literacy practices you've seen in year 7? The best catch-up stuff I've seen, beyond the one-to-one, you know, there are some absolutely amazing TAs and HLTAs working one-to-one, and that is hugely valuable, because some of those catch-up sessions really need to be one-to-one. Other than that, some of the best I've seen have been where drama is used. The more dramatic we are, the more memorable it is. And our ability to capture vocab in a drama setting and put it up on the walls and capture it so that we can remember it and use it again. Because there's something visceral, isn't there? There's something innate about when words come in a more dramatic situation, and that just helps them to be retained. And there's no good teaching vocab that is just going to disappear. You know, if we're only looking at vocabulary in a classroom setting and it doesn't become part of our receptive and expressive vocabulary, it's not going to be retained. And it's, in my view, drama is really underused as a vehicle to develop vocab. So yeah, one-to-one sessions with really skillful practitioners and drama. Thanks, Nikki. Great question. How do you help a child that's too scared to share ideas because of low self-esteem? Well, some of those gentler activities like that blackout poem, we can emulate that idea. If we emulate that idea and give the children that have that real so low self-esteem, if we give them those ideas and give them the words that they then make the choices of, that's quite empowering. And the more we do that and the more they feel successful, hopefully the more they will come out of their shells. Make things low stakes, and keep it in a limited sharing potential. You know, maybe they're just going to work in a pair if they've got very low self-esteem. But capturing ideas. I always think of our lower self-esteem kids, or perhaps our lower ability kids. The more pieces of a jigsaw we give them and then allow them to put together themselves, the better. And then just gradually remove pieces of the jigsaw, because they need to feel successful. Unless they're feeling successful, they're not going to want to have a go, because who wants to do that? Nobody wants to do it if they can't do it. They've got to feel success, and then bit by bit there will be a moment where they begin to feel the confidence because they've had success. Thanks, Maxine, that's a lovely question. Oh yes, lots. TikTok. I think TikTok's a great vehicle for this. You know, all of those dances and competitions that people have been having are such fun, aren't they? It's really great fun. But we could be doing that with text. You know, when we have the insults, Shakespearean insults, and we chuck out, you know, hag, sea, whatever. All those the Tempest is particularly good for all those insults, isn't it? There could be a proper Shakespearean insult going on TikTok. It could be like a tennis game with words on TikTok. Yeah, I think there's all sorts of potential there because it's finite. I've talked before about wanting to keep things finite because then it's achievable, and we don't panic our kids too much if it's finite. If you tell them they've got 1 minute, 50 words, and TikTok does that. So I think that, thanks, Sophie. I think there's lots we could do with TikTok. Someone's just asking how you access previous webinars. There's an OUP website now for them all, so you can find them all on there. I'm sure the links will be shown, but if not, follow me on Twitter. I've put them all up there. Hi, Teresa. Thank you. Have really enjoyed your sessions. Yay! Great news. Any ideas for reception? Oh, Teresa, you've got some very diddly tiny ones there. And it's going to be tough, isn't it, with them coming back and social distancing. Did you see those hats? So I think a school in China and put meter rules on hats for them to try and stay apart. I think for reception, obviously, it's all about play, and some nice ideas I've seen in reception is where you've got a word detective, and the word detective may well be your TA. And maybe they're going around with another child and they're both word detectives, but finding and capturing great talk. And it could be phrases, it could be little kennings, it could be just keywords, it might be just passionate words, it might be noun choices, but capturing talk and keeping it displayed, you know, interactively or whatever. That's a really lovely thing that I've seen happening, and we're amazing at this. We're really great at this. Have a look on Pinterest because there is such colourful imagery on there to have a look through, but capturing good quality top talk and keeping it to revisit and remind ourselves. I think that's a really great idea. Thanks, Teresa. I'm so glad you were here. Talking tins. I don't know about that, Sarah. That sounds good fun. Let's go and look for that on Pinterest. What's a talking tin? Don't know. But like an old-fashioned phone. Don't know. Well, it's 11 o'clock. Time for coffee. Thank you so much, everybody. Follow me on Twitter so we can stay in touch, and stay safe and have a lovely half term. I hope you get one. And wishing you all the best on this Thank a Teacher Day. Thank you all. Thank you.